Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, Nepal's constitutional standstill. After many missed deadlines, what will it take for lawmakers to finally reach a constitution? Nepal, it's complicated. So complicated, but our online community, they are so into this topic. Hopefully they will guide us through it. Malika Bilal, Nilika's like, oh, I hope so.
Full faith in them, yes. Because already someone is describing what this constitutional process means for your average person living in Nepal. So take a look at this tweet that we got out of Kathmandu. This person writes into the stream saying the situation is highly volatile here, and it could blow up any day because what political parties once promised is actually backfiring. So we'll get into why the situation is so volatile and why people believe their parties aren't listening to them on today's show. We need your help to do that. You can tweet us your questions and comments with hashtag AJStream.
Joining us in our studio, we have Narayan Shrestha, and he is a contributing writer to the Nepalese news website Seotapati. And via Skype in Kathmandu, Nepal, Dipendra Jha, he's a lawyer with the Supreme Court of Nepal. In Toronto, Canada, Manjushri Thapa is a writer and novelist. She's also the author of Forget Kathmandu, A Political History of Nepal. And in Kathmandu, Aditya Adhikari is a journalist and author of The Bullet and the Ballot Box. So good to have you here, everybody. Before we hear from you, a little bit of background. In Nepal, citizens are fed up with their government's inability to finalise a constitution, a process which has been ongoing since 2008. Constitutional struggles have long been a part of Nepal's transition from monarchy to democratic republic. Earlier this year, two devastating earthquakes prompted lawmakers to quicken their pace and agree on a constitutional draft. But the draft angered historically marginalised ethnic groups and activists. Many Nepalese minorities say they want their own states, citizenship, and have their rights officially recognised. This month, protests against the draft constitution led to violence, including clashes that killed at least 8 police officers in western Nepal. So why has it taken so long for Nepal to develop a constitution? I'm going to quiz all of the guests about this. This is what this entire conversation is about. But Narayan, it's been so long. I mean, this has taken over, it's now 8 years. Why does it take so long to get a constitution together?
Yes, it's taking a little longer time than initially it was thought. I think it's because in the first Constituent Assembly, none of the political party got majority of the vote or majority in the Parliament or Constituent Assembly to get through the Constitution. That's why the first Constituent Assembly couldn't deliver new constitution, and then Nepal has a second Constituent Assembly. I believe this assembly will deliver a new constitution within a couple of months' time.
What's the new deadline?
There are a couple of deadlines they already passed, but still I believe Nepal will have a new constitution.
The whole point of a deadline is you can't pass a deadline. It's like drop dead deadline. Manjushri, what's the new deadline, and do you feel that it will be honoured?
The draft constitution is supposed to be tabled a week from now, so we're under a very tight deadline. I, in a way, hope that we don't follow that deadline because almost the entire southern belt of the country is really up in arms around the issue of federalization. The issue of women's citizenship rights is completely unworked out. Nepal is, if the draft isn't revised, is going to be one of the only country in South Asia to deny women equal citizenship rights to men. And there are many other problematic clauses in this draft constitution. So forcing it through without adequate consultations is going to inflame the situation even further. So, you know, the country is already under a lot of conflict right now, and the situation could get worse if it's not handled well.
So it depends, right? You heard Manjushri there talk about some of the problematic clauses. Those were her words. So I want to give you two views from our community that kind of pick up on that. This is Samik, who says, the reason this has taken so long is because most of us haven't understood the concept of the Constitution. Everyone's in a rush to include everything. So you have that on one hand. On the other hand, you have this video comment from Samir. Have a listen.
It's because the people who have been given the responsibility of making the constitution are only talking along their own party lines rather than for the whole country. So little homework has gone into it. So if they started thinking about the country in general rather than their own party beliefs, then I think the constitution will be made quite well and on time.
So Dipendra, on one hand, you had someone saying everything has gone into this, and the other hand, you have Samir saying not enough homework has been done, people haven't been consulted. What's your take on that?
Actually, it's not everything, but at least the addressing the past conflict, why there was Maoist fighting for 10 years. There was like in 2000 big Madhesi movement. So it's about addressing the key issues that has caused conflict in the past. If we could not address, we could not ensure like a federalism issue of inclusion, addressing women right to citizenship issue, then there is no meaning to have the new constitution, any kind of constitution, because we have already interim constitution in our hand, and that has not addressed the problem. So it's not about having like a constitution that could not address the marginalized community agenda, the issue of representation, electoral system, and federalism issue. So yes, definitely, the root cause of conflicts needs to be addressed. It may look that people want to have many things in the constitution, but actually it's not many things, but the key things that need to be included, in my opinion.
See, Manjushri, if
Can I just, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Aditya, I can wait, you go ahead.
I'd like to, I think it's important to take a historical view of this and to understand why there is such great popular anger right now. Is because the demand for a constitution, it came out of the end of a 10-year civil war, and the monarchy was abolished in 2006, and when the idea of a new constitution, which would be drafted through elected constituent assembly, first came about, the idea was that, okay, so we had a major conflict in this country because of the state structure. It was a highly centralized, highly hierarchical, highly exploitative, and a new constitution was supposed to address that. And between the 2006 and 2008, there was a great deal of euphoria. You could hear the term "New Nepal" being thrown about. People wanted a new Nepal, and the constitution was supposed to institutionalize a new Nepal. But over a period of time, due to disagreements in the Constituent Assembly, as Narayanji was saying, there was no majority in the Constituent Assembly, and all parties had their various views.
Aditya, may I ask you, somebody who doesn't follow domestic Nepal politics every day, what is New Nepal? Why would be New Nepal different from Old Nepal? What would be the most significant changes?
The most significant changes would be, a number of things, basically. One, it would mean the abolition of the monarchy, which happened. The monarchy was abolished. It was Nepal used to be a Hindu state, and many minority religions felt kind of oppressed under that rubric. So, Nepal was declared a secular state. And third, in order to get rid of this highly centralized state where Kathmandu extracted everything from the periphery, there was this demand for federalization, a state structure where, there would be decentralization, but where more importantly also many ethnic groups which had been oppressed historically would get a degree of self-governance. So I might be missing a few more things here,
right,
but so things like this you get,
All right, Dipendra, what did you want to add?
Yeah, definitely like a jumping from monarchy to republican, from highly centralized structure to federalism, from like a domination of one identity to multicultural identity, from Hindu state to secularism, and from like a domination of a state structure like a bureaucracy, judiciary by one community and one caste to having diversity in those structures.
This sounds amazing. Dipendra, why is it taking so long?
Yeah.
Like this should be something you would like. Why would this not be fast-tracked? I know the earthquake had an impact, or the earthquakes in Nepal had an impact on, we need a constitution like this year.
Yeah, actually, the community, particularly we use the term ruling community, they don't want to share power with the ethnic minorities community whose population is actually 70% in this country. So the crux of that They don't want to decentralize the power. They don't want to federate the country. So it's all about sharing the power with different ethnic minority communities, and mentally they are not prepared to share. That's what I can say.
Can I add one point here that you said what the new Nepal is? I think the new Nepal is about the hope, about the development. Because of the earthquake that happened 3 months before, Nepal really needs something to move Nepal a little ahead. And that is, once Nepal gets a new constitution, then I think Nepal could at least get a stable government. And then I believe Nepal could move to the stage of development through maybe tourism or some other sort of thing. And at the same time, as Dipendra told, like the sharing of the power, yes, the power should be shared to the different communities or whatever the demography Nepal has. But at the same time, you should be careful of if the division of country into the future federal structure is divided or demarcated on the basis of all the ethnic lines, I think the tension will be prolonged forever. So that is something that, yes, Manjusri, go on. Yeah.
Could I just say, I agree that I think it's a good move to try and get a constitution through, but getting a bad constitution and one that leaves most of the country alienated from it and angry about it is certainly going to inflame the situation further. And I think that's the danger here. We're really, when we talk about old Nepal and new Nepal, we're really looking at a struggle for the soul of this country to see, you know, whether the old guard is going to let this country, which is demographically very young, very connected to the rest of the world, very hungry for connection, and very eager for modernization and development. The question is whether the old guard is going to try and keep us locked in, all of our potential locked inside this highly exclusionary centralized state structure, or whether it's really going to unleash all of this energy by devolving power and sharing power with those who have been excluded for Nepal's long history. Nepal is the oldest country in South Asia. It's been around for 250 years, and it's always been controlled by about 15% of the population, and the others want in, including women, and so that's what's at stake.
You know, Manjushri, when you talk about devolving power and sharing power, I hear you, but I just want to bring in this tweet here, because this is actually something we talked about at the very top of the show, the concerns that people say their political parties aren't addressing. So I wanted to pick up on that, make sure we get it in here. This is Sumeran, and he says, initially, every major caste in Nepal was promised a state. The constitution draft fails to address that, and now no one is backing that up. So this goes into what you were saying, Manjushri, about devolving power, sharing power, and how to go about doing that. Is that possible?
You know, there's so Nepal has more than 100 different identity groups. So right from the start, it was clear that not everyone was going to get a state of their own. And there was going to be sharing, and it wasn't going to be a kind of new state structure that allowed every single group to have its own state. So I think that there's been a lot of confusion in terms of what kind of debate has happened. There has been a huge amount of homework has gone into debating federalism, and what's happened now and where things have gone wrong is that the current polity, the government in charge now, is ignoring all of the homework that went into it, ignoring all of the previous recommendations and all of its previous commitments to come up with a federal structure that it's sort of akin to gerrymandering, that really only serves very short-term interests of the specific leaders in charge. And so that's what people are angry about. I think everyone understands that not everyone is going to get a state of their own.
Can I add one point here? You know, there are more than 100 different the caste or ethnic lines in Nepal, but if you promise to give state, or at least to name a part of a state with certain class, or not the class, certain caste, then what happens to the rest of the 99 castes?
Sure.
So I think the idea of creating federal structure with the caste, I think, doesn't suit for the Nepal.
Narayan, let me just illustrate what you just said. Yes, hold tight for a second. Let me just illustrate this. If you look here on my laptop, this is an ethnographic map, and you down here, the colors actually coincide with some of the ethnic groups that you will find in Nepal, but there are over 100 ethnic groups. So how do you promise all of those ethnic groups some power, some part of Nepal? How do you do that?
it's not, you know, I mean, the situation isn't that every ethnic group is demanding its own state. And many ethnicities can be classed together as larger groups. And also, you know, so you could say that there are maybe like 11 groups or 8 to 11 groups, depending on how you count.
But Aditya, if you give a federalist state, or if you name a federalist state with the name of one ethnic group, and then what happens to the rest? That's the question, I think.
An ethnic state doesn't mean that only people in one state are allowed to live there. I mean, there's been a great deal of misinformation about what ethnic federalism means. There is no such thing. No one in Nepal is demanding a state only for one ethnic group. All that is being demanded is basically that provinces should be named after and should provide and should be delineated in a way in which the historic boundaries of marginalized groups are respected, and that historically marginalized groups should have representation in the state structure, because the situation that exists currently is basically Nepal is a single ethnic state. It's like it's a centralized state that is a one administrative boundary. Like, you know, I don't know, probably over 85% of the people in the administration and the police and the political class, they come from, you know, two of the highest castes. Yeah. You know, so, I mean, so, you know, this is a kind of, you know, this thing about giving one kind of state to every ethnic group. It's like, you know, it's like a red herring, you know, that's not really the problem.
It is a red herring.
But anyway, I want to get into something else. This is, you know, so this is, you know, so we have our disagreements about federalism, all of us here, you know, but what I want to put forward is a more pragmatic concern. What have we seen in Nepal over the past 2 or 3 weeks? What we've seen is in the Eastern Terai, there's been a complete blockade. You know, there's like protests everywhere. You know, supplies to Kathmandu are being stopped. No one can drive there. In the Western Terai, in the southwestern part of the country, what we've had is after these protests in which 8 policemen were killed, you know, the entire Tharu community is one of the most marginalized communities in the country. And during the war, during the civil war, they suffered. Yeah, go on.
Can I jump in here?
Go on,
Let me just bring Dipendra in here, because he was waiting patiently. Then Narayan will go to you. Go ahead, Dipendra.
Yeah, actually, from the Monday, the scenario has changed, particularly after the incident of Tikapur incident, where the 8 police officers were killed. The scenario has been created by state, particularly that all the Tharu, Madhesi, like ethnic minorities communities are being seen and projected as being criminal. That actually weaken their political movement at the grounds. So that's one reality, and it's not about asking that 100 caste group is demanding the federalism based on caste. It's about recognition of their historical injustice, historical discrimination, and also their boundary as well. Like even in Madhes, the major demand is that it's a geographical continuity of 20 districts from Jhapa to Kanchanpur. So if you break that ethnic community into 5 groups, definitely they will have less voice in their own state. They will be in the minority.
Aditya was saying that this was a red herring. People are protesting about where their group is and where the delineation might be for different states. Let me just hold tight for a moment. Let me just go back to Malika. Malika.
One of the things that people online are mentioning is that this isn't just about minority groups along caste lines. This is also about women. So this is a tweet we got in from someone who says there's a deep-rooted patriarchal system that hates to give full citizens' rights to Nepalese women and to Dalits, the lower class. This is Deepti, who then talks about the citizenship rights of women in the country and not being allowed to pass on her citizenship to her child if she's not married to a Nepalese man. This says unethical, inhumane, and insulting. Manjushri, this is clearly something that people are upset about. You may not see protests, though, on the streets. Why is that?
No, this has been, you know, women have not been violent about their movement for citizenship. They've been very persistent, however, and there are 2 issues here. One is citizenship through descent. So women have been restricted in their ability to confer citizenship to their children independently of their husbands. And that's one thing. And then the other thing is citizenship by naturalization, where women who marry foreigners have to wait longer for their children, and it's much more complicated for their children to get citizenship by naturalization. And once they do get it, they're barred from certain posts in government. So women are, it's deeply, as a Nepali woman, I can say it's deeply personally humiliating to have a state that sees me as a second-class citizen, not deserving of any trust from the state or rights from the state. So I feel like this issue has been deeply emotive. The government gave us 3 days to give feedback on the draft constitution, and this issue got
it's 7 days,
overwhelming
in fact, 7
support.
days.
It got 7 days. It ended up being a very short amount of time by the time people got the draft. And there were more than 57,000 signatures came in. In a country that is not deeply connected and isn't,
so
doesn't have all of the
in the meantime, while
facilities.
everybody is wrangling about what should be in the constitution, what shouldn't be in the constitution, how is it affecting everyday Nepalese citizens down on the ground? What difference is this making?
Well, I think it's interesting. After the earthquake in particular, we saw how vulnerable Nepalese are. And instead of decreasing vulnerability, this constitution looks like heading towards increasing our vulnerability. So women won't be, and it's not just a question of women. So children won't be able to get citizenship and will be rendered, up to 4 million children will be rendered stateless by this new constitution. So this is a very dangerous kind of constitution to bring in a situation where we needed really laws to empower people even more. And that includes federalism, that includes other measures of inclusion like reservations and quotas and all of the things that we really did think we were going to get in a new Nepal.
Sure. So Dipendra, where do you think we are then with this constitution? There is a deadline, upcoming deadline, another one. Do you think you'll make it? Do you think you'll meet it?
I think there is no fixed deadline for the constitution, but 7 days has been given for the submission of amendment. And I think that even 7 days has been given. Just we hear that one of the largest party in the CA, they have said that their CA members can't submit the individual recommendation amendment, particularly UML has announced that. So I don't think even the 7 days has been given, anything would be improved, or the CA members are free to give their amendment in the CA. Right. So it's I can say 7 days as I was.
Right,
there is no space to actually.
It is essential.
Dipendra and Aditya and Madhushi and Narayan, I have my own deadline to actually adhere to, and unlike Nepal, I am sticking to it. We're continuing this conversation in a moment on the online post show at stream.aljazeera.com. But first, here's Malika with a look at the other stories we're following on the stream.
We start in the U.S. state of Alaska, where North America's tallest peak is getting its old name back. President Barack Obama announced he's restoring the mountain's original name, Denali, in a nod to the state's native people. The move ends a decades-long battle over what some have called Mount McKinley, named after the 25th U.S. president. Online, some weren't happy. TJ writes, so Obama arbitrarily removes tributes to assassinated American presidents? That's great. #NoRespect. Others argued this is about indigenous rights. Adrian tweets, seemingly subtle words carry a lot of power. This isn't a renaming, it's an acknowledgement of the indigenous place name. Yusuf wants this action to go further. He writes, hey Barack Obama, while you're at it, can we officially change the U.S. holiday Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? Next to Germany, where football fans are cheering on not only their players, but hundreds of refugees as well. The football team, Borussia Dortmund, invited 220 refugees to watch a match at their stadium. The club was just one of several teams that have invited asylum seekers to join their crowds. Football fans across the country have raised banners that read, "Refugees Welcome," during matches, and many online approve. Sinta tweets, banners welcoming refugees at German football games have overtaken the nasty attacks on refugees in Germany. As ever, Twitter is balanced. And Tancredi adds, huge part of German football fans have exhibited their welcome to refugees. Germany setting an example for modern society. Well, these are just some of the stories we're looking at today. You can check them out on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJStream and share your thoughts. Hemi?
Thanks so much. We're going to be talking about Nepal's constitution, still to come on our online post show. Hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show. We're talking about Nepal's long struggle to ratify a constitution. Let's get right back to that conversation. Let me show you here. The proposed 6 states in Nepal agreed as of August the 8th in the evening. All states get access to India, and then I'm going to show you these states here. Let me see. Aditya, do you see these states here that I'm showing on my laptop? Do you feel that these will be the final states for Nepal?
It's already changed once since then.
Already?
So
Goodness me, okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up. What's changed? What's new?
The province, the biggest province on your, if you start looking at the screen on the far left,
yes,
that has been divided into 2.
Oh wow, okay. Goodness me.
Yeah. That one, yeah.
Yeah, who's doing these negotiations then?
It's basically political leaders in Kathmandu, and in this case, they responded to widespread protests in some parts of that area.
Right. Manjushri, I remember one of the first things you said was federalism was an issue. What is the issue about federalism? Is it just where you divide and make the division for the states, or is there more to it than that?
I think the state delineation issue is probably the most explosive and difficult thing to negotiate. I feel like it's not so much the content of the negotiations that are difficult, but the way they've been handled. Because from the very beginning, as you say, this process has been going on for years. So the very first recommendation by the first Constituent Assembly was for 14 states. That got whittled down to 10 states, which most people, were beginning to talk about. When the parties this time around announced that they were going to go ahead with federalism, they announced 8 states, and then they did 6 states. And then after protest, they did 7 states in a very arbitrary manner. And I think that is the most dangerous part of this, is instead of talking to all stakeholders in an open and transparent manner, I believe that Nepali people are very reasonable and will sit at a table and have a discussion and come to some kind of negotiation. But what we're getting instead is the leaders arbitrarily coming to these very dangerous and sort of unjustified decisions. 6 states, 7 states, 8 states.
That's where the problem is. Can I jump here? I'm sorry to interrupt Manjushri. What's happening is the decision of how many federals or where the lines of federal states should be. All the political leaders are highly involved in this. I think it should be rather to the subject matter of experts, not the political leaders. Because if political leaders do that kind of thing, they will think in their mind about their voters, about their constituency. So that's where the problem is, I think.
Who are the experts then?
There are experts.
Yeah, just sorry to jump in here, but we have just to remind Narayanji that we had in the past expert commission that has already given its report saying that we need to have 10 states.
There was the expert committee, but it was like a committee. Even the Nepalese didn't know who the people were. So that kind of committee doesn't work. But there are people who know Nepal, who know.
No, what do you mean Nepali people didn't know who they were? They
the
were
big
top
experts,
academics. They were scholars.
Were there, actually.
It was a committee put by the Constituent Assembly. I mean, it was a committee formed by the Constituent Assembly according to the interim constitution.
Well,
what do you mean like that's no committee?
You can tell all the procedures, but if it was that kind of committee, it didn't get the much legitimacy. Had that committee got the legitimacy, it would have been followed at least.
Being put together by the Constituent Assembly. Anyway, I mean, I would like to say something here.
So just give me a moment. Aditya, I'm going to ask you to remember what you're about to say, because I know Malika wanted to talk about federalism, or the online community wanted to talk about that. Go ahead.
Exactly. So 2 views here on that point. This is Semik, who says the concept of federalism has been widely misunderstood every ethnic group is demanding their own state, and that's something we've already reiterated here. But if that is so, I want to go to this next tweet from Nafisi, who says, the Constitution must acknowledge the changed political landscape in discussing ignored groups, i.e. the Dalit and Muslims as an example. So Narayan, do you think that groups like these have been consulted? You talked about that panel of experts, or others challenged you that a panel of experts have discussed this already. Do you think that these groups...
Well, Dalits, Muslims, or even other groups, somehow they were consulted. But the problem is the political leaders, they are trying to divide the lines of the federalist structures, and that's the problem. Because if political leaders do that, they will always think about their constituencies, about their voters. So that's the problem. I think that is the task should be done by expert or something else. That's what I think.
Well, I think it's really time for the political leaders to talk to the stakeholders. And I know that Dipenderji has been involved very closely in terms of negotiating various rights for people of the Madhesh and also citizenship rights. I would really love to know from him whether he thinks there's any space for negotiation, whether the government would listen to anyone. I mean, they have said we're open to talks, but they've made no move towards it. How sincere are they? I mean, can this be solved in a couple of months if there were sincere talks?
Yeah, in fact, there is already invitation to all the groups for the negotiation and the dialogue. But the thing is that particularly Madhesi, Tharu, who have been protesting throughout Tarai, and they have blocked it since last 2 weeks, they said that our line is clear. There is no meaning to have another negotiation. We have clearly said, okay, follow the State Restructuring Commission report. There is already the rules set by Constituent Assembly first, and interim constitution has also set the guideline. So what's the meaning to have another agreement? Just pay attention to what you agreed in the past, like 2-3 years. Look on the first CA assembly, look on the 22-point agreement that's signed between the government and the Madhesis particularly. So I think it's all about now the time to show little bit flexibility, and I think there is a space. Still there is a space because they are under pressure. The half of the country is totally blocked. There is no supply from Tarai to Kathmandu. So now I think they are under pressure, and I'm sure that there would be call for negotiations and we'll have a peaceful solution. Definitely for that, we need to halt the constitution process for 1 or 2 weeks because both can't go together at this time. But about particularly on citizenship, I'm really worried. I think that chapter may not be reopened again. This is my word. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in terms of citizenship, there's been several times because of the advocacy of Dipenderji and Sapana Pradhan Malla and other women's rights activists who have been leading this movement for years in Nepal, the Constituent Assembly has agreed to change the language on citizenship and then surreptitiously taken out the language and changed it back. So they're actually taking away rights that we already have, and there's been absolutely no show of sincerity at all. It really is the behavior of a rogue state in terms of citizenship.
Yeah, even on that, like particularly on, yeah.
I just make a small point that there are many people in Kathmandu who say that a constitution, no matter what, should be promulgated by next week. But disregarding all the ideological battles, what we should recognize is that a large part of the country is under curfew. There have been massive protests. In the southwestern parts of the country, this entire community is feeling under siege. There's been violence.
And army is mobilized. In fact, army is also mobilized.
The army has been mobilized. I mean, it looks really bad if you kind of promulgate a constitution through having had to deploy the army against your own people. I mean, that is just not going to be a legitimate and durable constitution. I mean, that fact alone should kind of should demonstrate that something should change in the constitution drafting process.
All right, let me just do a quick poll of our guests. Let's say, what's today's date? The 31st of August? All right, let's say by December the 31st, will Nepal have a constitution, Narayan?
My understanding and...
No, I'm asking you.
Yes. Yes, Nepal will have a new constitution because Nepal needs to move forward.
All right. Dipendra, December 31st, how will this Nepal constitution look? Will we have one?
I'm less hopeful. Yeah, we need to move forward, but we need to move forward with progressive constitution, not regressive constitution.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. If we have to have this conversation again, I'll be very upset. Manjushri, December the 31st, constitution or no constitution?
I want it to be there, but I don't see that it's going to happen with a good constitution.
Aditya, we have a constitution by December the 31st, the end of this year. How many years does it make that then? Is it 8 years by the end of this year?
Well, we might have a new constitution, but then we could very well have another constitution in the next 5 years because this one is rejected. So
Goodness
that
me.
wouldn't be a good outcome either.
All right. Ha! Malika, what do you have?
This is a good rhetorical question. We're going to leave it as a rhetorical question, have our guests answer it on Twitter. This is Arpan, and he says he wants to remind us, really, one demonstrator was reportedly killed today, scores injured in fresh clashes today. So he's asking, is Nepal really ready to be federated fairly, and whether or not that's going to happen is something you can answer online with #AJStream.
All right, thanks very much to all of our guests, Narayan Shrestha, Dipendra Jha, Manjushri Thapa, and Aditya Adhikari. Thank you very much for talking about Nepal's constitution. Yet to be there in terms of finalisation, but great having that unpacking to see where we are right now. Thanks for joining us on the stream. Take care.